Yo, what's good YouTube? It's boardzy, and this is going to be a review of the Roccat Burst Pro Air, and arguably more importantly, my first video with my new camera. So please excuse any focus issues, or if it just looks bad, just let me know feedback, because this new camera, I spent too much money for it to be worse. But yeah, gonna get into the review. The Roccat Burst Pro Air is a wireless version of the Roccat Burst that they've had out for a long time now. I'd say well over a year at this point. But unlike most mice that try to keep the weight similar or even lower the weight when they swap from wired to wireless, the Burst Pro Air weighs 13 grams more than the wired version of the Burst. And whether you're a fan of that change or not, without a doubt, it changes the way the mouse feels with the higher weight and just the different weight distribution. They added the battery. If I had to bet my life on it, I would say it's towards the back of the mouse. So if you fingertip grip, I don't know why you would be going for like a large 80-gram mouse, but you probably will feel it being somewhat back heavy. So I wouldn't recommend it for that, but for claw grips or any grip where you're putting a lot of pressure, honestly palm grip as well, you're not going to have any issues with the weight balancing. And something to keep in mind, especially if you have or use the standard Burst Pro, the Burst Pro Air is going to feel a lot more dense. And I'm not saying that 80 grams is an unusable weight. I don't want it to seem like that's what I'm saying. Obviously, a few years ago, everybody was using the standard G Pro wireless. That was 80 grams. But if they're going to call this the Burst Pro Air, release it over a year later after the wired mouse is released, and it's heavier and there's just no improvements features-wise, I don't know. Like, what is pro about this mouse? Maybe they should make a Burst Pro Air Pro and then actually take off the RGB, make it lighter, maybe even throw in a better sensor. I just gave Roccat a really good idea. I'm sure they will get on that pretty quickly, but in general, I don't actually think this mouse is bad. I just think it's weird that they went the enthusiast route with their wired mouse and then seemed to cater to the RGB, I don't even want to say casual crowd with the Burst Pro Air, but I don't know. I mean, I guess the mouse looks pretty. It has some RGB on it, but getting to other features, like the build quality is incredible on this mouse. Gotta give credit where it's due. I actually flung it off my desk by accident. No problems at all. The shells are just, I mean, it's an insanely solid shell. No creaking, no rattling, really no issues with the build quality, including all of the buttons. For some reason, they did make a silent change to the side buttons, just making them heavier and a bit less clicky in general. They're a bit more stiff now. I have no idea why they would do that. So the side button feel is slightly different. So is the main click feel. I did say they made no improvements because I believe it's the same switch, but it feels a bit more tolerable. So I will say the main clicks do feel a bit less dull and hollow than before, which is a great thing. Seeing companies finally being able to implement optical switches that don't feel like complete trash is a step in the right direction. Another redeeming factor for this mouse are the stock skates. They really help with the weight as well. They're just extremely good. I don't know what to say. They feel on par with something like Tiger Ice, just aftermarket level quality out of the box. I don't think they provide an extra set. I could be wrong though. And they also don't provide a adapter for the USB dongle. For me, that's not a problem because I can just use another mouse's adapter, but on a $100 mouse, it's really the standard. I just can't think of a reason why they wouldn't provide one besides cheaping out. As you can see, the mouse is using USB-C to charge, God bless it. In terms of battery life, despite the insane amount of RGB on this mouse, it really doesn't seem too bad. I'm averaging around 5 to 7 days on a full charge. Which, like I said, for this amount of RGB is kind of impressive, and the wireless performance with the 3370 on this is up to par. I honestly don't have any issues with the tracking, the LOD, polling rate consistency. The sensor does feel fine. I did notice when just comparing the wired and the wireless version that movements felt more instant on the wired one, but I just figure that's because the mouse itself is actually lighter and easier to get moving. Because just in all instances, I still was performing similarly, but it's just like that responsiveness. The Burst Pro Wire does feel more responsive, but I don't think that's due to the internals. I think it's due to the weight. But yeah, moving on to other features. I mean, the shape, like I said, same as before. It's an ambi shape designed for claw grip. It got some comparisons to the XM1, but it really doesn't feel similar at all, in my opinion. It really feels like distinctly its own shape. I don't love it for claw grip, but if you go at it with a more relaxed grip, it's easy to get a grip of. It feels like a pretty bulky mouse. The sides are extremely flat, So I don't have an issue with it performance-wise, especially since the side buttons are so large and easy to access. It's hard for me to really complain about it, but I do wish they made a mini version, maybe the Burst Pro Air Mini Pro. I've given them 2 ideas now. That could be an amazing mouse as well. Just a bit smaller, because if I had to change one thing about this shape, it would definitely be making it a bit more narrow, because the mouse is actually pretty short in general compared to some other ambi mice, but it's very wide and it has a high profile hump, but it feels blocky and not rounded like something like the XM1. So honestly, this mouse, like I said, it's just not my favorite for claw grip, but I do see how some people could prefer it if you are a fan of that relaxed style grip. But in general, if you have small hands, I think it would be hard to do anything besides palm grip. Really large hands, you'll be able to claw it or palm it. But at $100, it's definitely a unique experience. I mean, the RGB light show, that's some crazy stuff, man. There's a lot of R&D behind that. The optical switches being improved is definitely good. They're still not great. They don't feel anything close to a standard switch, and they don't feel as good as the Razer optical switches, but they're better than before. And before I was like, man, these clicks are unusable, and people are like, yeah, you're crying too much. And now they make slight improvements. So that's all I ever hope to do. Be the reason behind slight improvements. The scroll wheel is still really good. Another thing is that this mouse has Bluetooth. You don't typically see that on like higher end gaming mice. So I mean, that's if you need a mouse with Bluetooth. If you want to bring this to work or school and you need Bluetooth, you could do it by all means. The coating is another aspect of this mouse that feels premium. It is different on the main clicks and the palm area than it is on the sides. I don't know if this is like for Minecraft drag clicking purposes. I do think this mouse is good for that, but yeah, it feels different. It feels grippy all around, pretty premium, no issues with sweat. So yeah, I think a lot of like the engineering is solid, and this mouse has a lot of potential, but they just didn't really go all out with it. So it's a solid mouse at $100. It kind of just sits middle of the pack, but if you want it and you like the shape, keep in mind that it will feel a bit more dense and just heavier in hand than the wired version. And the wired version at $45 versus the wireless at $100, it's going to come down to how much you value wireless and if you want the slight click improvement, because I really can't stress enough, these standard Burst Pro's clicks are just kind of mid, while these are like a bit more spammable and actually well tensioned. And that's really going to be all for my review. I'm not going to give the mouse the seal of approval. I just find it funny how much they talk about it being lightweight on the box, and the weight just really doesn't reflect it. Like, they've made lighter mice than this years ago. So yeah, I just found that a bit ironic. But yeah, that's going to be all for my review of the Burst Pro Air. Let me know what you think. If I'm wrong, if this is the greatest mouse of all time, let me know. But yeah, like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and peace. Also, let me know about the camera.